They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Was it a Lovefest or a Slugfest? The Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, came to the White House to meet with President Trump after his promise to get Canada to become the 51st state in the United States. Welcome to the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorka.
And we are bringing in a Canadian as an expert today. I'm telling you this. And she's an expert in many things. Emma Jo Morris is here. She's the former politics editor over at Breitbart, but they won't let her go. She's still in a hostage situation. She still writes for Breitbart. She's also part of a brand new brand consultancy firm. It's called Beck Stone, beckandstone.com. And you can give her a follow at Emma Jo NYC. Emma Jo Morris, welcome to the Happy Women Podcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, that's right. The Breitbart hostage. That's hilarious. I'm gonna see if I can get a title, seeing as I don't get paid, but maybe I can get a title, the Bright hostage at Breitbart News.
I think that would be a big on your business card. I mean, come on, who wouldn't love to see that? All right, well, let's jump in because we're going to talk about what you're doing now. But before we do, you just went to the White House Correspondents' dinner, and not a usual place for people who probably have a conservative slant. I know there was a lot of concern over how they could have let the Joe Biden story just sit there for 4 years. What was that whole dinner like? You got to fill us in.
Yeah. If you ignore a story for 4 years, it's totally obvious you actually get an award in like $2,500. So just so you know, you have to tweak your approach to journalism a little bit, and you'll be rewarded. But yeah, no, I don't know. So it's not even like that conservatives don't go. Like, I wouldn't even say that. It's like just people who are not like in the hive, like in the mainstream media hive. And I feel like I'm practicing some restraint to not use the word cult, actually. It did really feel like a cult ceremony. It was just very strange, like worshiping at the altar of I don't know what, ego. It was strange. And I wrote about it at Breitbart because I walked out of that experience thinking, like, first of all, these people are totally nuts. But second of all, I think that the way that they've become nuts is probably something that illuminates their bias and their work. And I deduced that it was this crazy level of ego and narcissism, basically, that was informing their perspective and that was informing their writing and their coverage and their worldview, frankly. They were using words like they were using language that was spiritual. It was really spiritual language. And it was like a very intense us versus them, fascists, enemies of the state, and meanwhile, it was completely lost on them that they were sitting in a room, in a ballroom, actually, in black tie, not 2 miles from the White House that they claim apparently is like persecuting them. Drinking champagne and eating filet mignon, which, by the way, was medium well. Gross. But anyway.
That's how I like it. Trump and I like it medium well and with ketchup, please.
Oh, well.
Don't tell anybody.
No judgment, I think.
It's all right. It's okay.
I'm only judging them when they do it. Yeah, I know Trump does that. It's such a funny little quirk. But anyway, so I'm like sitting there like eating this like leathery steak and drinking this champagne and listening to them talk about how they are apparently like under attack and are like the single thing standing between democracy and tyranny for this country. And I realized, like, my definition of being insane is having a perspective that's completely divorced from observable facts. Like, that's like typically like my like non psychology degree definition of that. And I realized that I was witnessing that at that dinner. And then I thought to myself, well, what is causing this divorce from reality? Oh, it's this like self-aggrandizement, this narcissism, this main character syndrome that's like collective. And then I think, how much coverage is influenced by this reality, this fake reality that they live in? And then it occurred to me, I have a Breitbart column because this is nuts, and this is probably not the only venue it occurs in. And these are the people who dictate the content in all of the mainstream media and all of the official records, quote unquote, that are produced in real time. And it was just a total, it was a total vanity exercise. And then, too, like I had this other thought, like, oh, they hate Trump the most, but they were like venerating George Bush and Reagan at that dinner too, because obviously they had attended the dinner. They had respected, they had bent the knee and given the press their audience, and Trump hadn't. But, Bush isn't more ideologically aligned with an MSNBC host who is the president of the White House Correspondents Association than Trump. Oh, wait a second. They're upset that he makes them irrelevant. They're upset that he insults them. That's why there's so much venom in their coverage toward him. I mean, there was literally a hero video with like music behind George Bush. Give me a break. They're not covering Trump the way they are because they're Democrats. No, it's about the fact that Trump doesn't honor them in the way that they think they deserve. And he violates their sense of reality and damages their ego ultimately. And that's what they can't stand about him. So I wrote that at Breitbart. Maybe it's beyond my pay grade, but I wrote it in first person. So I'm not proclaiming to have any like data to support this. I'm just talking about my experience there.
So there was a particular moment from the dinner that Andrew Klavan called out. I think he said it was Alex Thompson from Axios talked about Biden's decline and the media's cover up or failure to cover the story. And Alex Thompson said, we missed a lot of this story, and therefore we're partly to blame for people's lack of trust in the media. But what the point that Klavan made is they actually lied about everything, but this is the story they got caught lying about. So, he said he kind of ran through this litany of all the other things they lied about: Russian collusion, good people being on both sides, that famous quote of Trump's. They lied about the COVID China leak and where it came from. They lied about the COVID vaccine. They lied about Fauci and his role in the pandemic. So he goes on and on. But there was also another thing, important thing, big thing that they lied about, and that was the Hunter Biden laptop story. Mm-hmm. So you played a pivotal role in that story. So take us back, if you would. Tell us a little bit about your role in the story and how the media covered that or handled it.
Yeah, for sure, totally. And I just want to do maybe one. Can I just give one maybe like tweak of what Andrew Klavan said? And I have total respect for him, and this is totally not a dig, but just my perception of it is not that like they just admitted it. Like it wasn't like, oh, like I woke up today and decided I was going to admit this one. I think it was that after that debate performance, when you had Biden juxtaposed directly with Trump, it was obvious that Biden was so obviously demented that he wasn't going to be able to beat Trump, who was it looked like pitying Biden at one point during that debate because he was so unraveling just so obviously. And they lost the ability to, first of all, hide it, sure, but more importantly, they realized that Biden wasn't going to probably win. And that was when all of a sudden we're forthcoming. How could we miss it? We missed it. There's a reason why this was the one story that kind of like ended up, getting blown open. And the exact timing that happened was because the Democratic establishment realized, and you saw that happening if you're watching cable news that night, realized in real time, wait a second, this is like obviously a corpse that we cannot run against somebody who has total energy and stamina, i.e. Trump. So yeah, it wasn't like this is the one, the road to Damascus moment happened at the debate. No. It's that, again, Trump is the most offensive figure possible to them. So any means to getting Trump out of the White House is justifiable to them. He's a fascist. And fascist really just means obviously somebody who puts them personally like under attack, but not under attack physically, under attack like emotionally. And that was why Biden had to be called out for being like half dead, because he was not being persuasive anymore to the American public. But yeah, so the Hunter Biden laptop, yeah, huge cover up. In Alex Thompson's defense, I think that he actually probably got bamboozled by the initial reaction to it, which was the lie that it was Russian disinformation, which was disseminated by the security state through social media companies and then parroted uncritically by mainstream media because, again, they just Trump bad, Biden good, must defend Biden like a program. So I think that he was kind of persuaded by that because people in positions of authority were saying it. But I think that he pivoted and realized that probably earlier than a lot of other colleagues of his in the media. But yeah, like that was definitely one of those stories. And again, Trump was running. This was an extremely damaging series about Biden's. It showed pretty obvious corruption. And I think that there was no real prosecution on FARA violations, obviously, and on kind of like corruption charges because the statute of limitations had been passed, which is kind of silly. But I mean, that's our legal system, whatever. I'm not going to apply it on that. But it was pretty obvious what was going on. Everybody in Washington knew what was going on. This was a problem throughout the Obama administration. It was something that had been flagged numerous times. The Obama administration, the FBI knew that the laptop was just kind of floating around, which is why they had kind of laid the pretext to social media companies to censor it when it would eventually get picked up by a news outlet. And yeah, we all just kind of papered over it and said that it was a disinformation campaign because, Orange Man bad, which is a travesty. It's really a travesty. It was such a desecration of the First Amendment and such a desecration of what it means to hold an American election and be an American citizen. It's actually really sad. It's just sometimes hard to summon the rage 5 years later because I've spent 5 years exhibiting this righteous indignation about it. But I testified to Congress about it. It was one of the most, I think, scandalous events in media history, at least. Brazen, violating, perverted, awful situation that, was never kind of really rectified. And I hope that Kash Patel at the FBI, who seems like a wonderful FBI chief, I really hope that he does address what is obviously a systemic and pervasive problem where the Bureau thinks that they can run around to private companies, circumvent the limitations put on them by putting censorship responsibilities on companies that technically can censor. Super gross, super wrong, not appropriate. And I hope that that's addressed and can never happen again. And that was always, the point that I tried to make ever since this event was, God help us. We need to rectify this situation by correcting any process that allowed it to occur.
Hey guys, Mother's Day is just around the corner. And what better way to celebrate your mom? Maybe a mother figure, maybe someone who is a brand new mom, than with Cozy Earth pajamas. Have you tried Cozy Earth yet? I got to tell you, I was seeing them all over the place and I just got my first pair and I don't ever want to take them off again. First of all, Cozy Earth pajamas come in a wide range of sizes and even in lengths. I'm tall. You can get them in tall. How amazing is that? You can get them in any length you want and in a ton of colors. So whether your mom is a pink girl, maybe she's more classic, maybe black or red, they have colors that match everybody's personality. And the quality of these pajamas is amazing. They are soft. They are cozy. They are durable. And the greatest thing is they breathe. So even if you get the long sleeves like I have, you still feel good during the night. It's not holding on to all that heat, if you know what I mean. So if you want to spoil your mom, and I know I do, my mom has done everything for me. She is my biggest fan, a great supporter. And she actually saw my Cozy Earth pajamas. So this is no joke. I'm going to get her own pair hair this year for Mother's Day because she does so much for everybody else. Why not give her something to relax in, to take some time for herself in, to read a book, to take a nap? Cozy Earth pajamas are the ultimate in relaxation and coziness. And your mom gives that to you. Why not give it back to her? And right now, to celebrate moms everywhere, Cozy Earth is giving all of you a special promo, 40% off. That means you can save money on your gift for your mom, your friends. Maybe you have someone getting married or having a baby. This would be the perfect time to celebrate them. And with 40% off, you can celebrate yourself too. I won't tell anybody. Use code HAPPYWOMEN right now at CozyEarth.com. Go to the website, CozyEarth.com. Use code HAPPYWOMEN and you'll save 40% off your order. Take advantage. And don't forget about your mom. She deserves the best. What does that look like for you? What does a correction look like? Because this is very personal. I mean, this is your work. Your work was it was trampled on and put aside and called all sorts of things. Anybody who dared believe it were called things right along with you. So what is appropriate and who should be held accountable?
It's tricky, and I think that there isn't a magic wand that fixes it because it's, listen, there's First Amendment that applies to everybody, right? So including agents of the FBI who go to social media companies and say like, hey, this is disinformation. Like they have the right to say that even when they're wrong. You have the right to lie, actually. So, even if you're a government employee, you don't lose rights. So it's kind of a tricky thing to find a solution to. But I think one thing is like, to me, like I learned that through the Twitter files, actually, that there is like staffs of former security state employees that work at all of these companies, CIA agents, NSA agents, FBI agents. They're loaded up into social media companies. Maybe that shouldn't be allowed. Maybe if you're a spy, you shouldn't be allowed to work at a communication company for at least, 10 years or maybe forever. And I understand the reason why they go, because they get these huge pay increases for their expertise in cybersecurity or their expertise in just security in general or crime or whatever. But I don't know, find somebody else. I don't know. That feels inappropriate. It feels incestuous. And it feels like a slippery slope, which it obviously was. The Bureau Slack channel at Twitter was the ones heavily involved in this censorship. James Baker was the general counsel at Twitter, while the FBI was muscling around Twitter to censor. I'm sorry, but that is just something about that feels not right and like it should be illegal. So again, it's not illegal. They have the right to work wherever they want. They have the right to say whatever they want. But I think that could be a start. If you ever worked at the security state, you are banned from working on social media or in.
So you kind of glossed over this, but I'd love to go back to the Hunter Biden laptop story, because if I remember correctly, you actually broke the story. How did that? I mean, that's big. Walk us through it. Like, how did that even happen? How did you?
And when you met the laptop guy, did you say, "Could you take that hat off just for seriousness"? Just kidding.
I am proud to be in America where people can dress how they want, self-expression, live and let live. That's cool. No, but oh God, that's a story, and maybe we have to have a PM episode where we open a bottle of wine and spend the whole time talking about it. But basically the way that it happened was I had a friend from many years ago when I moved to New York who was not in politics actually at the time that we became friends at all. He just had like kind of a conservative politics as a personal hobby. And he eventually got into media, and his first job was with Steve Bannon with his War Room podcast, producing the War Room podcast when it first launched. And so we stayed friends for many years, and eventually, like, we had been friends for like 5 years at this point when he starts to work at Bannon. And I had started at the New York Post being deputy politics editor, so I was running national politics coverage at the Post. And they get the laptop. Rudy had the laptop and called Bannon because it was like loaded with CCP, and Bannon is obviously obsessed with the CCP. And they got it, and they were just kind of like, okay, well, we have to get this out to the media. And my friend who worked with Bannon, it was a small team. He was like, oh, my girl's like the editor at the Post. Like, let's do the Post. Like, she's totally good and she's going to treat it well. And so I got this text from my friend saying, because I never met Steve Bannon, I didn't know Bannon, and I knew who he was, obviously, but I didn't know him. And I get this text saying, hey, pick up your phone, Bannon's about to call you. A few minutes later, obviously, I get the call and I pick up the phone, and it's the voice at the other end of the line says, hi, this is Steve Bannon. I have a story that's going to change your life. And I kind of thought, he always had I always thought he had this flamboyant kind of way of talking, this kind of dramatic way of talking. And I was like, what is it? And he's like, I have Hunter Biden's computer. And obviously there was a long road from that initial conversation, but that was how it made its way to me initially. And we fought and we fought all the way, even after publication. I was on texting with him and fighting with him, and he was constantly calling me and going nuts. And it was great. It was riveting. But yeah, that was how it all happened. Steve Bannon was my source.
Amazing. I love this story. I really want to do an after hours with you to get all of the details. All right. So when you had that initial call, and then we're going to talk about Canada because we have to do that too. But when you got that initial call and he says it's a life-changing story, when you hear it's Hunter Biden's laptop and you start to see the information on there, what's your reaction? I mean, do you ever feel like you're nervous, like you're going to get in, like you're in danger? I mean, or are you excited? Well, how do you feel when you get this?
Well, so there was a road of various emotions. So he tells me that, and actually it was on Yom Kippur. I don't know if you guys are Jewish or know about that, but it's a fast day for Jews. So and no water even. So I was dead when he called me in the afternoon, and I couldn't even really process what he was saying. I was like, I'm going to call you tomorrow. So the first reaction was just overwhelmed and then shut down, nothing. And then I call him back and he's telling me this, and then he starts sending me PDFs, and he's like, just publish these. This is the bombshell stories. Just publish them. And I'm like, what is this? You have to keep in mind, I'm obviously personally politically conservative. That's whatever. I vote for Trump. But I was the editor of the Post. I can't just run stuff because it feels good for me. You know what I mean? I have to look into it. Anyway, so he's sending me these PDFs and telling me to just run them. And I'm like, no, what is this? And I didn't even fully believe. He tells me Hunter Biden's addicted to crack and forgot his laptop at a store, and then somehow I got it. If you think of that story, just hearing it for the first time, not knowing anything, at the time, with no retrospect or hindsight, you're just what are you talking about? That sounds crazy. You sound like you're about to get me fired is kind of what's going through my mind at first. What? And I just kept resisting every time he would insist on me publishing these random things that he was sending me. I was like, absolutely not. How did you even get this? I don't believe this. How am I supposed to verify this? Did you make this? And I ran this kind of back and forth. And then finally, he's like, okay. It's at Rudy's lawyer's house in Long Island. Just go see it. And I was like, okay. And I called Vish, this friend of mine who was his producer. And I said, this is crazy. What are you guys doing? I was like, you can just stop lying. I was like, you can tell me the truth. Because I was sure they were lying or something sketchy was going on. And I was like, you could just tell me the truth. I was like, there's tons of precedent to publish theft, information that was stolen. I was like, there actually is. The Pentagon Papers set that precedent where there was a leaker inside the Pentagon and he was stealing documents and giving to the Washington Post. And the Washington Post actually was allowed to publish. So just all that to say, there's a difference between having something given to you versus soliciting somebody to do a crime. And in this case, they had come to me. So I was like, you could tell me the truth and be honest with me. In fact, you must. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to necessarily pursue the story or whatever. There's ways to do it and there's journalistic precedent for it. And he just says to me, he's like, Emma, you grew up in a really nice neighborhood and I grew up in a really shitty neighborhood and you just don't know crackheads and I do. And I'm telling you that the story is true and it's totally believable. So I found that kind of convincing actually. So I was like, okay, fine. So I'll go to the lawyer's house in Long Island and look at it. And when I do, I get there and I was expecting North Korean Minder, but it wasn't that at all. It was he was super chill and it was a really nice house. And he just sat me down at his desk and it was kind of okay, here's the laptop. have fun, and just left. And I'm like going through it, and at that point I'm like, whoa, like I am like every alarm is going off in my head, like this is real, like this is scaring me.
What was more shocking to you? Was it that, I mean, because I don't actually really even know what was on there. So what was surprising to you? Were you looking at photographs? Were you looking at documents? Were you looking at emails? What were you able to see, and what was most shocking to you?
So that's it. I was able to see everything. So at first, like I looked at his emails, and they all just populated in the mail app. And I was seeing like stuff from his like wife, like his ex-wife and her lawyer, and stuff from like he's emailing himself, and stuff from his friends, and then like business stuff. And I'm like, wow, this looks legit. And then I go into the Photos app, and there's photos of like Beau Biden on his deathbed, and photos of like selfies where you see like his arm in the frame of him and his father, and obviously porn and like of him. And you're just like thinking about it and realizing it and seeing that and thinking to yourself, not that it's something you would report, but just this would be impossible to fake. It would be an extremely sophisticated operation to fake this. In fact, it's impossible. It's just impossible. The kids and the family and Hallie Biden, draped over him on the beach. It was impossible. And then I thought to myself, like, that was when I realized, like, the intimacy. When I saw that intimacy, I was like, okay, this is a thing. I got to figure out how to do this.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. That's a huge story. And I can't imagine that moment where you're sitting in front of the laptop and you're seeing all that. And as much as it's a story, it's also someone's life. I mean, it's a lot of responsibility to carry, I would imagine.
Oh, definitely. And I had that thought, actually after we finally got the laptop, because then, we go through legal and whatever, there's a whole process, but I finally ended up getting the actual physical hard drive, and I opened it, and the first email in the inbox is this gut-wrenching diary entry from Hunter to himself. Like, he emails it to himself. He obviously wrote it on his phone and wanted it on his computer, or vice versa. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, maybe like this is a bad call, because he was so human. And it took me a second to like get back into my professional head, and not my personal head. My personal head honestly was screaming at me, don't do this. And my professional head was screaming at me a little louder, saying, you have a job and this guy sold our country to China.
Mm-hmm. And and just real quick here, that's where I always have felt like this story is gray area, because I feel like he was used by his father and by his stepmother. And I think that he was used, and he was a pawn, and he did some really bad things, but he was still trying to win the approval of his father. That doesn't make it right, but it is not a black and white issue, I don't think.
Yeah. And more than that, he was trying to support his family. Like, I don't know if you guys have kids, but when you got kids, nothing really matters except feeding them. And this is his opportunity. And not only was it his opportunity, he's an addict. It was his opportunity for his addiction. It was his opportunity for his children. But I think actually more than the addiction, it was the children. It was you see this all checkered throughout the communications on the laptop, the constant pestering from his kids and other people, but his wife, is one. But really, like, his daughter is constantly, Dad, tuition's due. Dad, I need $500, and I get that. I'm a parent. It's like, I think that's what was his prime motivator was, I have an opportunity to rake in cash for very little effort. I also happen to be an addict, which inhibits my productivity. This is something that I can do with minimal productivity and maximum income. And he did it. Also, it's totally normalized in DC to be a scumbag, by the way.
Sadly.
Yeah. Let's talk
sadly.
All right,
we got this guy's computer.
All right, we got to shift, because we can't neglect our beloved neighbor to the north, right? Canada's in the news right now.
Beloved.
Yeah. So you were born in Canada?
Hey guys, it's Jennifer Horn and Katie Gorka from the Happy Women podcast, and we are both so excited to talk to you about my PhD, weightloss.com. The PhD weight loss program has worked for Katie. She is in maintenance. I am still going through my journey, but Katie, I just told you this last weekend, I threw out a stack of clothes that no longer fit. It's time for a new wardrobe. That's right. I'm excited about that. It's a good problem to have, I guess.
I was so excited because I actually had to get rid of almost my entire winter wardrobe because I went from a size 12 to a size 8. And it's funny because I kept a few of my favorite pieces and I put them on and they're like so baggy. I don't feel good in them. But yeah, it was absolutely an amazing program. And what I'm excited about, I'm now 2 years post weight loss and I've been able to maintain my weight this whole time. So it's been great.
Incredible victories. Time to feel them for yourself. Call PhD Weight Loss right now, 864-644-1900, 864-644-1900, or myphdweightloss.com. Use code Jen, myphdweightloss.com, code Jen.
Yeah, I'm from Montreal. I lived in Montreal until I was 23. I only moved to the U.S. to produce Hannity after university. But I'm a dual citizen. My dad's American. So thank God I got my American citizenship when I was a kid. And it got me a ticket out of that failed state that's just north of us, 300 miles from where I'm sitting right now. This meeting is so funny. I don't know if you guys have takes about it or if you want me to just kind of run with it. I just exploded on Twitter. I spazzed out on Twitter just before we got on this podcast. Because so Carney is the new Prime Minister of Canada, elected 1 week ago. 1 week ago, this election was called. And the whole election was literally about Trump. And the whole election was basically everyone being super mad and offended that Trump would say that Canada should be the 51st state and mock them and also put tariffs on them. Like, how dare he? And it was this outrage in Canada, a national scandal that he did that. And there was a conservative 20 points in the lead just before that happened. And then that happened, and he was all of a sudden, Poilievre is his name, and he was all of a sudden somehow linked to Trump and the disgusting bore that Trump is for saying these things about Canada and daring to question Canada's arrangements with the United States and China, really. And this guy just tanks the election. And the whole thing was that Carney, who was the Liberal candidate, was going to stand up to Trump. Poilievre was too similar to Trump. And the Canadians literally elected a prime minister on the premise that he would push back on Trump and these horrible national insults that Trump is giving. Okay, fine. So they do it. They elect this Liberal. They trash out a guy who was 20 points ahead after 10 years of Liberal government, which has totally destroyed the country, like actually destroyed the country, has made it basically unlivable. And also politically co-opted by China, but whatever. And they elect this Liberal to continue this policy. But he was going to stand up to Trump. And what happens? 1 week later, he walks into the White House, and I swear to God, the meeting opens up. I hope you play the tape. Trump is a transformational leader. Trump is a great leader. It was literally like, we love Trump. Canada needs Trump, which actually that's true. And the whole time that the election was going on, I was on Alex Marlowe's show. I'm sorry, I'm raising my voice. I'm just a little bit annoyed because I was saying this for 5 weeks on Alex Marlowe's show, like 6 times. Canada taking an anti-American position is utterly suicidal. Anybody in Canada who is believing that stance is stupid. That is not going to happen. Canada has no sovereignty. Their economic sovereignty is just, their economic survival relies on the United States. Okay, no one listens to Emma. Nobody listens to Breitbart. Okay, no problem. What happens? He gets elected and does exactly what his survival depends on, which is bends the knee to Trump immediately without hesitation or debate. And here we are. And I just find that hilarious, actually. He took like this jingoistic, literally hyper-nationalist position that made absolutely no sense. make obviously no sense. If you know anything about the Canadian economy, you know that it cannot stand up to the United States. That's ridiculous. It's going to accept whatever terms the United States dictates. And maybe if the United States is nice, they will caveat certain things for Canada's interests. And it just happened. Just unreal. Meanwhile, they'll continue with open borders.
So I do think it was so. Oh, go ahead, Katie. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to ask, do you think Trump, though, was serious about proposing that Canada become the 51st state, or do you think that's just trolling, like along the lines of, I'm going to become the Pope and I'm going to run for a third term?
Don't group the third term thing in with the Pope. I think that honestly, he's not trolling. I think it's more like closer to the third term than the Pope. And actually, I think that it would not be in America's best interest to absorb Canada, because Canada is a distressed asset. Canada is a mess.
Yeah.
I don't even know how that would happen where the U.S. actually comes out benefiting at all, because it has been so, and it's really sad to say this, isn't it? I grew up in Montreal. It's one of the most, I think that's a fact, one of the most beautiful and charming cities in the world. Very high culture in Montreal, very safe place to live, beautiful city, European, literally cobblestone roads, French, farming, like really a perfect place to grow up. And it's been destroyed. Completely destroyed. The demographics look nothing like it used to. The inflation is through the roof. Living in Montreal costs the same amount basically now as living in New York City.
Wow.
It's no longer the place that I grew up, and it's a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy. So I'm not like gloating like, ha ha, Canada takes the L. It's actually really sad. But I don't really see what the benefit is of absorbing Canada. They have some oil, they have natural resources, they have good geographical positioning for our security, which I think is really what Trump is getting at. But yeah, like I think that he wants a Western Hemisphere, like he wants total control over the Western Hemisphere, and I think that that's his foreign policy doctrine. And that's probably a deeper conversation. But I think that the same thing is behind the Greenland stuff. The same thing is about the Panama Canal stuff. You know, if you look at where all of these places are on a map, it becomes pretty obvious where his head's at, which is controlling the entire Western Hemisphere, really, or being the hegemon of the Western Hemisphere. And it's really interesting and it's really deep. And I think that he is serious for that reason. I think it's part of a grander vision. But it's a pretty problematic place right now, politically, economically, demographically. There's literally like foreign turf wars that have been imported to Canada. There's people burning down major cities every weekend on behalf of Hamas. There's physical fights that go on between Sheiks and Hindus. This is a place that is has some challenges.
Yeah. Just a final question. So seeing that performance at the White House today, Carney, you're right. It's been a week. He's totally changed his tune. What are the Canadian people going to say when he goes home? Because they're ticked off. They don't even want to travel to the United States anymore. So is he going to face the heat at home now?
I can't imagine how he doesn't. Presumably, he gets like sheltered from maybe some criticism a little bit because he's liberal, he's different, he's more sophisticated, and he just had to say that to the barbarian to make him, more pliant. He'll go home and say something like that. But we all saw what happened. Like, that was a total capitulation. And not only was it capitulation, but he was sucking up.
We'll see if it works. Right? I mean, we'll see if those tariffs get lessened. Maybe he thinks this is how he plays Trump. I don't know. I think Trump is smarter than that. Emma Jo Morris, you are so fun to talk to. You're welcome back anytime. Make sure you give her a follow at Emma Jo NYC. And thanks so much for sharing your stories. Really, really interesting. So thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me your time.
Of course. Oh my gosh. And don't forget to get Katie's book. All of you that do not have it, it is called Next Gen Marxism, available wherever you get your books, paperback coming soon. And you can check her out, katiegorka.org. Search for her on Facebook. Just look for Catherine Gorka, and on X at Gorka Katie. You can find me on social media too. Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and Facebook, at Jennifer Horn on Truth and on X. Thank you for those 5-star reviews and sharing Happy Women with your friends. You can connect with us on all our platforms at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Happy Women. Thanks for joining us. It's another episode of the Happy Women Podcast.